Y'all, it's Alex from You Should Craft, and today I'll show you how to make this infinity scarf, or it is a giant long rectangle, so if you just want to keep it as a regular scarf, I'll show you how to do that option too. But alright, let's talk about what materials we'll need for our scarves. So in order to crochet the infinity scarf, you're going to need two 100-gram balls of Brava. And you could easily sub this with a similar amount of another kind of worsted weight yarn. It's totally up to you. I'm using, this color is called Tide Pool, and it's like a dark teal color. And then I'm also using Cobblestone Heather. For your hook, you'll need a J 6mm. This is from the Bright set from We Crochet. And then you'll need like standard notions as well. So scissors, a tapestry needle. And you don't have to have stitch markers, but I find them really helpful for keeping track of my starting chain. Because for this project, you're going to need to chain, like, depending on what size you do, either 176 or 186 chains. So these definitely are recommended. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so I'm starting with that Cobblestone Heather color, but you can start with whichever one of your colors you want. And like I said, in the materials part, you're going to chain 176. That's if you want to join this at the end to become an infinity scarf. Or you can chain 186 if you just want to do a regular scarf. Or you can just do 176 and like see how you feel at the end. It's up to you. So I like to use my stitch markers to mark every like 20 chains, just so that it's easier to count, and you're not counting like up to 170 or more, and sometimes people are talking to you, and I just find it a lot easier to keep track of my place if I just pop one down every 20 stitches or every 20 chains, and then I don't have to keep going back to count. I can just count by 20s. So right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So a few more before my stitch marker. And here's 20. Oh my gosh, these are all like hooked together. And I just pop that in to show me where 20 stitches is. So go ahead and finish up your starting chain. Again, you'll either need 176 or 176 or 186 chains. So go ahead and finish up your starting chain, and I'll catch back up with you when I'm done with mine. Okay, so I have gone ahead and finished all 176 of my chains. And for this pattern, we are going to count the turning chain 2 as a stitch. You will either be joining it together, so you won't really notice it, or adding fringe, so you won't really notice it. And I find that it's just easier to count it. So skip the first 2 and then double crochet into the third chain from your hook. And we're just going to double crochet all the way across. And this will give us 175 double crochets. It's important that we end up with an odd number because we'll need that when we do our like filet crochet rows where we have the rotation between the chained stitches and the double crochet stitches. But so again, for rows 1 and 2, we're just double crocheting all the way across. If you started with a chain of 176, you should end up with 175 double crochets. And if you started with a chain of 186, then you'll end up with 185. So go ahead, pause the video and finish rows 1 and 2, which again are just straight up double crochets. You should have one less than what your starting chain was. Okay, so I have finished all but the very last double crochet of row 2. And I just wanted to show you this one because it's a little bit weird since we'll be crocheting into the top of this chain 2 that we had on our starting chain. So you'll insert your hook into the chain and then just double crochet as usual. It's just a little bit different because it's not really the top of a stitch. It's like the last chain. But all right. So I highly recommend going through and counting just to make sure that you actually have 175 or 185 stitches. You can technically add like an increase or a decrease if needed, if you find that your count is a little bit off and when you get to the very end. But it will just be easier if you know ahead of time that you have the right amount of stitches. But so row 3 is going to look a little bit different. I'm going to chain 3 and turn my work. And this chain 3 counts as my turning chain 2 and a chain 1 for skipping a stitch. So I'm not going to crochet into the first stitch because that one goes with my chain 2. And then I'm going to skip the next stitch. So I'm putting my first double crochet into the third, oh my gosh, into the third stitch. And so this row is going to be like a filet crochet row. If you remember, we used the same strategy for our fingerless gloves yesterday. So I chain 1, skip 1, and then double crochet. And I'm going to do this to the end. And since we have an odd number of stitches, it'll end on a double crochet. So again, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. So chained 1, skipping 1, and now I'll double crochet. All right, so repeat that chain 1, skip 1, double crochet until you reach the very end of your row. And again, if you're counting the chain spaces, you should end up with 175 stitches in this row. And that's for row 3. So go ahead, pause the video and finish up row 3. So you have just completed the first repeat. So for the rest of this, you're going to repeat row 2, so that solid double crochet row, and row 3, this one with the holes. You'll repeat those 2 more times. So for rows 4 and 5 and rows 6 and 7. And then we'll finish off this color with 2 rows of just solid double crochets. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn. And then these chain 2 counts as my first stitch. So I'll skip that first one. And then I'll crochet into the chain space. And then I'll crochet into the top of this double crochet. And then into the chain space. And you'll just do this all the way down this row. And then remember, you're repeating the pattern of rows 2 and 3. You'll repeat it 2 more times. So row 4 is the one I'm working on. It will be solid double crochets. Row 5 will have the holes, that DC chain 1, skip 1 pattern. Row 6 will be solid, and row 7 will have the holes again. So go ahead and finish those up. And that's if you're crocheting the infinity scarf, or if you want a really wide scarf. If you just want to do a kind of like traditional sized regular scarf, then you can just repeat that one more time. So if you're doing an infinity scarf, you need a total of 3 repeats. So you'll have the solid and spaced rows up till row 7. And if you're doing a regular scarf, so one that's not super wide, you will want to do just one more repeat. So you'll finish row 4 and then you'll do a row 5 with these as well. So go ahead and finish that up, and I'll catch back up with you to show you how to finish this color. And then we're going to repeat this whole thing with our next color too. Okay, so I've finished my repeats. So if you're crocheting the infinity scarf, remember it'll be a little bit thicker. So I have, here's my first repeat of rows 2 and 3, second repeat of rows 2 and 3, and then here's my third repeat of rows 2 and 3. So the next thing I'm going to do is put down 2 rows of straight up double crochets. The first row is going to be my starting color, so this dark gray. And the second row, I'm going to change colors. So I will just chain 2 like before. I've already turned my work. And then I am, again, just normal double crocheting all the way across this row. So you can finish this up. Remember, we're going to have 1 row in color number 1 or color A, and then, and then 1 row in your second color. So I'll finish up this row in my dark gray color, and then I'll check back in with you to show you how I'm changing colors and going on to my second color. And then we'll be wrapping up the last section of our scarf. Okay, so I finished my row of solid double crochets, and I've left the last little bit of my very last stitch because we'll use this to change to the next color. One thing to keep in mind is that I only had a teeny bit of yarn left from my first color. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye on your gauge, because if you're using a lot more yarn, then you could like legitimately run out on this color. All right, but so now I'm going to switch to my Tide Pool color, which is this kind of dark teal. And we do that by joining our next color, leaving like a 6 to 8 inch tail again so that you have something to weave in. So I just do my very last yarn over on my double crochet with the teal or color B. So I've got 2 loops on my hook. I yarn over and pull through them, which finishes off that double crochet. And then I just chain 2 to start my next row. And then turn. And I can just start double crocheting. And if you need to, you can kind of pull on these strands to just tighten it up a little bit. And when you're done, you'll weave these in just to make sure it's really secure. So my section for color B is going to look exactly the same as it did for color A, but just in the opposite order. So this row that I'm doing right now, the solid double crochets, it's going to be the same as this row. And then I'll have an open row, a closed row, an open row, a closed row, an open row, and then 2 closed rows just to finish it off. So again, you're crocheting the exact same thing, just in the opposite order. So you'll be working backwards until you finish your scarf. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're not making the infinity scarf, you had 1 less repeat of these rows. So yours right now, it will not have these 2 rows. So it would be like this, I guess. But you would still repeat that pattern for the second half. But that's it. So finish up with your second color. Again, same rows, just in opposite order. And then I can catch back up with you at the end to show you how to finish it off. So if you're doing the infinity scarf, that'll be how to join it together. And if you're doing like a fringed regular scarf, then I'll show you how to add your fringe. But cool. So pause the video, finish up, and I'll see you later. All right, so I finished crocheting all of the rows of my scarf. I did the infinity scarf, so I have 4 more rows than you. If you did the regular scarf, then you'll be short 2 repeats, so 1 per color. So you'll be missing one of these open rows and one of these solid rows. So it'll be about like this size, but obviously not as bunchy. So the next thing you're going to do is just trim your yarn. If you are going to be adding fringe, then you just need to leave a tail that's as long as the fringe that you want. So probably like 6 to 8 inches long. If you are going to be weaving to create an infinity scarf, then you need to make sure that your tail is a little bit longer than your scarf is wide, but then also some extra so you can weave in the end. So I'm just going to cut a piece that's twice as long. Just trim it off with my tiny scissors, pull my hook all the way through, and then here is where you can choose what you want to do. So to add fringe, I've cut a couple pieces of yarn. This is 4 pieces of yarn. They are a little bit longer than a foot, but again, you get to choose how long your fringe is. So I've folded it in half, and I will just insert my hook and then pull all of this through. And then this will be kind of hard to manage, but then you pull it all through again. And then you'll just trim this once you're happy with how it looks and add all the other fringe that you want. Alternatively, and this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to make an infinity scarf. So I don't need any fringe, but what I will need is my tapestry needle, which I've got right here. So I'll join my tapestry needle to my yarn. And it got a little bit bunchy. And I'm going to make sure my scarf is totally flat and then line up my edges. So this is the start and the finish. And then I'm just straight up gonna crochet, or I'm sorry, I'm not even crocheting. I'm just seaming this open or closed. Gosh, I can't talk today. So just seam it all the way down. Make sure you're pulling tight enough to close it, but not so tight that you're creating like awkward bunching or like a really noticeable seam. And you'll just crochet all the way down until you've finished. And then you'll weave in these extra ends. And that's it. You'll be ready to wear your infinity scarf. So go ahead and finish that up, or finish your fringe if you wanted to keep it as a regular scarf. All right, so I still need to weave in my ends, but I finished seaming the teal part of my scarf. But the problem that I've encountered is that I use 2 colors. So your options for this side are to either use one of the yarn tails that you already have if you have one that's long enough to seam this little bit, or you can just cut off a new piece of yarn and seam this together. You totally could use your other color of yarn too. It's just that you would be able to see the seam running through. And depending on what colors you used and what style you're going for, that could possibly be cute. It just depends. If you are doing that, I would make sure that you seam it really clean so that the seam looks cute and not like sloppy. But this is it. So go ahead and finish up seaming. Make sure that you subscribe to the You Should Craft channel and check out the You Should Craft blog for more free patterns and tutorials. Thanks for watching.